Welcome to Wealth Coherence. I'm your host, Emily Bouchard, a social worker specializing in human development and fascinated by human potential. For over 20 years, I've been a coach to families with successful businesses and leaders with successful careers, and you may be surprised to learn that true wealth is about coherence. When our inner state of being aligns with how we live, give, lead, and love. In this series, we will explore an integrated model to flourish coherently, because wealth isn't what we have, it's who we are when we are fully aligned. Well, welcome to this very special episode of Wealth Coherence, where I am sitting with my father, who is going to be 91 in 4 days. And he has some wisdom that I was hoping to get to explore and share with him. And his name is Dr. Milton Finegold. What do you remember about what qualities of leadership that you use that really made for a culture of your department that was so collaborative and supportive? And what do you think that you brought to your leadership that really supported this group of brilliant scientists and physicians?
Well, we had very regular meetings of the department where everyone was invited to speak and share whatever it is was on their mind. Sometimes it's a complaint about something, or sometimes it's a suggestion about improving things. That's more often the case. Sometimes it's a reminder of what we've failed to do, so we should stop doing that. And those meetings were extremely productive. People were very, very cheerful.
So you really fostered a transparency, like an ability to speak whatever was on your mind and know that it was safe and that it was going to be respected and listened to. And
it was public.
So there was
the whole group was involved. It wasn't just between me and them. Sometimes people came to see me about something individual, and maybe that would go forward or not. But the meetings that we had regularly addressed the serious needs of the group. And it was a lot of joint. It wasn't me making decisions. It was a group together coming up with suggestions and plans and so on.
That's very forward thinking, to have it be more consensus and collaborative as opposed to hierarchical and top down.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had, because of the circumstances of how I got to, well, first of all, in Bellevue, where I first started in a leadership role as a youngster, I just got very lucky because I was interested in a certain kind of research. I can't even remember now what it was about. And the chief at that time, Chandler Stetson, was somebody I really admired in every way. And when there was an opening, he gave me a position, a promotion. And it was very early in a career yet. And the circumstances, Bellevue being the primary public hospital in New York City and huge, gave me an awful lot of opportunity to learn things that worked.
Oh, I can just imagine. Yeah.
And
also get a sense of what didn't work too.
And it offered what I needed to learn how to fix.
Yeah.
But my relationships with people there were very, very good. And I left reluctantly to go to Houston when I was invited. But it was obvious that in Houston, there was an opportunity to develop my own program, and it was going to be at a place that was very central. And so it was worthwhile. Half of my 90 years were spent in Houston.
Yeah, and the degree of which the medical center here has grown, and you've seen so many changes. And
it was young and fresh, whereas Bellevue was there. It had been there, it was well known, and you did your best, and the resources were not as great as they were in Houston. So I had a tremendous opportunity. And also, I had learned to do electron microscopy. That was what attracted my attention. But when I went as a director, I didn't do that myself. I hired people who would do it, and then I would act as a advisor or supporter and learner with them. But I was no longer doing that kind of work. And,
I worked each summer in different labs, and like your microbiology lab, and I spent time, and I really appreciated the diversity of the people that worked
oh my goodness
for you and in your different departments. And what do you think contributed to those departments working so well together? And you had to run so many different things and have them go so well.
I think the atmosphere at the hospital was very, very positive. It was highly respected by the outside world. So you felt you were part of something that had a good background and good potential. but also the advances in science and medicine were taking place at a very rapid pace. And everybody was engaged and thoughtful about where do they fit in and what can they offer and how, not to become famous or make a lot of money, but to take advantage of the situation. That was the attitude. And whether it was at a departmental meeting, which was very regular activity, or you had an idea and you knocked on the door and said, listen to this, and what can we learn? Whichever way it worked, everybody was engaged in improving things, not just for yourself, not selfishly, but rather for the benefit of the patients that we cared for and for the delivery of good medicine, medical care.
So really feeling part and instrumental in making a difference and having an impact again, like we were
And it was measurable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And now at this stage in your life, you looking back, you've seen all these different things and what you've been involved in, and what do you see has really contributed to living a meaningful, fulfilling, rich life?
Well, I could be reiterating a lot of what we talked about in answering that kind of question. I mean, I think luck is very important, obviously.
Do you think you make your own luck, or do you think that it's just completely
Well,
random and nothing to do with you?
no, I think some things that happen you take advantage of, like catching the nurse's finger in the bedside railing so she would marry you.
It leads
Do
with
I
that.
take pride in doing that? Well, my reaction to
It
it
wasn't
was,
intentional, but you did make the best
but
of
it was the
it.
best of it. And
Yeah.
then having an empty seat next to Jan, and after listening to her contribution, and then turning out that that was something that we were both very much attracted to in every way that you could, man and woman. And she was not going to have children, but she was going to be able to help raise the children she acquired that
Yeah.
way. And meeting her families and so forth. And we did a lot of traveling together. And I was just grateful for the fact, well, I was just being a physician and having a lot of resources was very special. But for example, my parents could come and visit and we could afford it.
Yeah, yeah.
And we could then take a trip and go.
So do you think that like the cultivation of relationships and seizing opportunities as they show up helps to cultivate the kind of luck that you were talking about, like Ralph Feigen contacting you to come and work in Houston? That was a result of the relationship you built at the Army base, or like it, I mean, I believe that there's really good fortune that happens in our lives when we are intentional about how we move in the world and how we interact with people and wanting to make the world a better place. You attract people like that, or people want to work with you in different ways. And just wondering if you see that that's part of what you, I mean, luck you just said is like the main thing, but it's like, is it volitional? Is it anything to do with you, or is it just purely like you're either lucky or you're not?
Well, let me talk about what it was like to be in a leadership position recruiting people. Some of those recruits didn't work out. You know, just what for whatever the reason. So you say, I'm sorry, but this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, 9 out of 10 did.
Yeah.
So some of it has to do with learning how to weigh and make judgment about how people are functioning and how they're doing. You know, I when I was in college, I had the enormous benefit of starting it as a 16-year-old at that time, and I spent 4 incredible years at Columbia. I still have one friend left from that experience who I talked to this morning. And he was less even younger than me. And we learned something very, very important in that environment, and that was how to really study the world carefully. We were on the Columbia Spectator, a daily newspaper, and we both became members of the managing board of the paper at the latter part of our junior year. So the senior year, we were the managing board of the paper. And that was a lot of responsibility. We had to report the news, be alert, thoughtful, and collaborative. So there were 7 people, Jerry and I and 5 others, who ran the newspaper. That was learning how to be a manager, learning how to learn, and then learning how to execute, and who gets promoted and who doesn't, and so forth. So just starting back then in college, we learned
Having to give feedback to people when they didn't produce the way you needed to, or like you had to
absolutely,
really,
and supposing somebody made a mistake or told a lie, or what have you. So there was an education beyond the classroom. The classroom was great. We had good teachers. You had lots of freedom. Columbia was all male at that time, but so we had
Well, they
girlfriends.
Barnard,
Yeah, I had girlfriends. But anyway, the point is that we learned from one another. The students taught one another as much as anybody from the faculty did. There are two or three faculty members who are really important, and some of them I can even remember the names. But the learning how to interact positively to manage something important is the basis of it all. And it started with the spectator.
It's amazing. So young, and it's served you so well. So when you think, just to go back to that question around what is it that really cultivates a truly rich life of meaning, it sounds like luck is an important one. Anything else that you see would be important?
Well, it's very interesting to be talking with you about this now. We were talking this very visit of yours about where I have failed to do it the way I'd like it to be done. And it's because of my own internal way of making judgments and maybe not making good judgments. So we've been focusing on the good side. And now, at the age of almost 91, I have got to focus on what is not working properly to correct it, because I don't want my last years to be remembered as flawed.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had an interesting conversation about that. We talked about the difference between being flawed versus recognizing that there's behaviors that you might be choosing to do that aren't getting you the results you want, or maybe you've gotten feedback that people aren't happy with them. And I think that there's a really important distinction here in terms of making an assessment about oneself as flawed or faulty or somehow broken, because then it becomes a who am I? And it becomes very hard to change it or shift it because it's part of your identity. But if it's more about, oh, I've gotten some pretty painful pieces of feedback recently that let me know my behaviors are not resonating with people maybe the way they used to. And I need to look at how to learn new behaviors that will foster these relationships that are so important to me. And so it becomes about what am I doing and how can I change that versus who am I being and I can't because it's an inherent flaw, right? So I think that that's an important distinction to make in terms of how to respond or move in the world when we do receive feedback that might be upsetting or disappointing or hurtful in some ways because somebody doesn't want to interact in the same way that they did before, or they don't like you in the same way because of something. I mean, it might just be a misunderstanding, but it's like, how do we approach that in a way where it's how can I learn to be even better in my interactions so that's less likely to happen in the future? And what can I learn from this experience that'll support me in furthering the relationships I have already?
Yes.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wealth Coherence. If it resonated, I'd love for you to share it or leave a review. This will help others find their way to this space. And if you're ready to keep exploring what it means to live, lead, and give from a place of coherence, head to emilybouchard.com to stay connected. Until next time, be well internally and allow your external life to be the fullest expression of who you truly are.